Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Writers Chat Tuesday. I am Brandy Bro. I'm one of your co-hosts here with Melissa Stroh and Norma Poor. And this is where Craft Connects Community. We're so glad to have you with us today. We have a great show ahead of us. We're going to be discussing Kit Lit. We have Robin Currie, our special guest with us today, and I'm going to pass off the mic to my co-host Norma to introduce her. Norma.
Good morning, everyone. So glad you are here. I am very excited to have Robin back with us. She was with us last year, and we just loved the information that she shared with us about what libraries want from us as writers, as authors. And if you're interested in that, look back on YouTube and our archives, and I'm sure you can find it there. Today, Robin is going to be talking to us about Kidlit. Excuse me. She's going to be talking about the opening page. How do you catch the little child's attention and the adult's attention even if you're just thinking about writing for children? This is a great episode for you, and I'm looking forward to what Robin's going to share with us. But before I turn it over to her, let me tell you a little bit about Robin. She is a multi-award winning author, and she has led public library children's departments as a preschool literacy specialist before answering the call to ordained ministry in the Lutheran and Episcopal churches. With more than 1.7 million copies sold of 47 traditionally published picture books, she writes stories to read and read again. Robin, congratulations on the 1.7 million books sold. That's amazing. And we are so glad you're here. Take it away.
Thank you. Listening to that, I mostly thought, wow, you have to live a long time to have accomplished all of those things. So I will acknowledge that, yes, I've done it slowly. None of it has been instant success. So if you're out there in the trenches thinking, oh, this is never going to happen, it will in time. But that's my introductory piece of information. I'd love to share my screen because I've got some pictures I'd love to show you. So let me see how that works. There we are. Now, you've got everybody lined up to where you can see what we're doing. You really don't need to see me. I'm not all the interesting part here.
Yes, we see the entire screen. I don't know if you want to go to
Excellent.
presentation mode or just leave it at where it is.
I'm fine with that. I've just got a few people here in front of me. So there we go. No, much better. All right. Writing for children is the best job in the world. It is just a blessing to be able to come into the lives of little people, both with literacy and with the good news. So these are a couple little guys I worked with when I was teaching in Tanzania for several weeks, and they did not have any books in their classrooms at all. So the opportunity to sit down and look at a book, and I believe that one is Caps for Sale with the monkeys in the tree, they were just amazed and delighted. So if you have an opportunity to write for children, grasp it with all your heart because it's a wonderful thing to do. The first thing you have to do, and this may seem obvious, but it's not always, is to write your story. You cannot begin to sell or get critiques or tweak or edit until you have written it down. It may be a rough first draft. I have drawers full of rough drafts. I have drawers full of rejected drafts when I thought they were ready to go. But the first thing, it always starts with writing your story. So an idea that you have in your mind cannot be copyrighted and it can't be critiqued. Many books are on the same subject and have a similar storyline. You see our Red Riding Hood choices there. So what makes your book unique is your word choice and your voice. It's how you interact with the words that are on the page. Here's a few more spin-offs of that Red Riding Hood story from different viewpoints in Spanish, all different ways of looking at basically the same story. So even if you think your story, and pretty much it's true of everything, has already been told, there's still a new spin. There's a new something you personally can give it. So get that story on paper, a beginning, a middle, and an end. That seems like it's obvious too, but sometimes we get reflecting on things and we write what's essentially just a reflection, thinking of the sunshine on a lovely lake on a beautiful day. And we write an absolutely beautiful thing, but it's not a story to be put in a picture book. Those need a beginning, a middle, and an end. Here are some pitfalls that will automatically make someone look at your picture book and say, this is not for our publisher. A morals or message. That's the total point of the story. If when you describe your book, you say, well, the reason I wrote it is to teach kids that they should be, then that moral is going to come through more strongly than you think. It just needs to be a story. There can be a point to the story. There should be a point to the story. There may be a moral or a message to the story, but it needs to be in and under the story itself. Our second pitfall would be talking down to children. Children think they are as wonderful as adults, and I will grant that they know a lot more about my remote control and my computer than I do. I have a 16-year-old grandson that I totally love, but I don't even understand him when he starts talking about computers. So talking down to kids is pointless, and it's off-putting to the children that are listening. The third one is adults coming to the rescue, even in teen books. It's hard if you're writing a book on a difficult subject not to have the parents come rushing in to save the day. But in picture books, children like to feel empowered to at least contribute to the solution, whatever it is. And even in teenage books, if you get a teen that has gotten into a lot of trouble and the teacher or the counselor or the police officers come in and literally rescue them without any teen growth, that doesn't work. Another pitfall that seems obvious is if it's bad rhyme, spelling, or punctuation. Be exceedingly professional, and that certainly does not only apply to children's books, to any kind of writing. There's plenty of ways to check all those things out besides your own eyes, because it's very difficult to edit your own things after you've been looking at it for a while. And the last pitfall that will tip off an editor is an unnecessary description of people and items. If it is essential to the storyline that the girl have red hair, then include that. Otherwise, if it's just a picture in your mind that, oh, that'd be really, really cute with red hair, leave it out. The illustrator may grasp that. You can certainly make a suggestion, but in the body of the manuscript itself, if it's not important for red hair, to have red hair, don't even mention it. That's the same for clothing or setting, anywhere else that you really don't need to mention what's happening unless it affects the story. So those are some of the things that watch out for when you're writing your story. Now you start with the beginning, of course. And beginnings are unfortunately where most people fall down, because an editor or an agent can very quickly tell if it's a good beginning and it's going to engage children. I've sat in more than 1,000 story times, usually with 3, 4, 5-year-olds who are incredibly wiggly. If I had their energy, it would be a wonderful thing. But they don't want to listen too long. They know very quickly when they're done listening. And they'll show you that by simply getting up and walking away. So it's not hard to tell if you have a bad beginning, but don't go that far. One bad beginning is once upon a time or a long time ago, anything like that, unless you are writing a real fairy tale classic. If you're writing another story version of Red Riding Hood, by all means use that. But for your regular story, even if you're doing a Bible story, try to avoid saying in ancient times or something like that. Start it with action instead. Here's another bad beginning. Max was a nice boy who liked his town. I can practically hear you snoring already, and I can see 4 kids just stood up and walked away. Or this is a story about kindness. We know right away it's going to be a moral lecture on something. So that first line is incredibly important. You have to engage right away. So here's some good beginnings. A told B and B told C, I'll meet you at the top of the coconut tree. Whose tongue is this? And it was a rickety, run-down house. Any of these starts will make you want to turn the page, and that's what you want the author, the illustrator, the editor, the agent, and eventually the child to want to do. So we got our big beginning. So once the story's written, figure out what it is. And this seems kind of obvious too. Usually most of us sit down thinking, oh, I'm going to write a book for, and in XX. In our brains, we have the idea of maybe a baby sitting on a mother's lap, or a new reader trying to figure out the words that are in the book, or maybe a teenager reading about a different part of the world and finding out about those things. So figuring out what your story is, let's put it through some criteria and see what we've written. You may have written a board book. Board books sound like they're the easiest thing in the world to write, and they are not, because every single word in a board book matters. You don't have any room for extra description, for extra analysis, for any comments whatsoever. So most of these are about 50 to 300 words, with the average today being about 100. There are many board books that are simply reductions of picture books. Those ones are not as successful because, of course, they're written for the picture book audience. They sometimes get read to toddlers, meaning babies birthed 3, but they're not right for them. So the ones I've pictured here are books that are specifically written for the preschool or for the toddler age for a board book. So it can be a concept book. Here's where ABC, 1, 2, 3, opposites, colors, all those come in, or a simple story with one storyline. How to Dress a Dinosaur is one that I wrote, and the entire story can be summed up in kid gets dressed. That's it. That's all there is to that story. But of course, there's a lot of imagination that goes along with it. This is also the genre where we find the lift the flap books, the cloth and novelty books. You see Giraffe and Friends is a cloth book that can be chewed on. And Color the Ocean is a book that changes color when you hold it under the bath water. A lot of fun books can be written in the board book line, but it's very minimal words and a very, very simple story. Most people who want to get into writing for children think in terms of the picture book. 400 to 1,000 words. And I would say now, if you write anything over 500, you're going to have an editor not pay much attention to it. Stories have gotten shorter and shorter. So that's why it's important when you look at other books like yours to be sure to look at new books. Because books that were written when we were growing up, or even when our children or grandchildren were growing up, are not appropriate for today's kids. These are for ages 2 to 6, and they have the attention span of 2 to 6-year-olds. Sometimes picture books can be used with even older students. If you're writing on, for example, divorce or a war situation, then you can use them up into, 8, 9, 10 years old. But in general, your audience is going to be ages 2 to 6. So a good group to picture for is not the single child sitting on the sofa, but rather a group of children listening in story time. Picture books have a complete story arc. That one has a beginning, middle, end. They're not a concept book. They don't tell about certain things. They have an actual story arc in which there's usually character development. The main person in the book in some way is changed, learns something new, develops in some ways in the course of the story. There can be humor, there can be mystery. It can be fairly subtle at this point because these kids are sophisticated enough that if they don't get it themselves, if they don't hear the humor in a line, they'll hear the older kids laugh and they'll laugh too. The important thing about picture books is the words and pictures interact. So in the board books, it was really all about the pictures and the words were just sort of went along. Here, the words and the pictures go together in a way that is very unique. The pictures are as essential as the words. In fact, one of our highest honors in the American Library Association is the Caldecott Award, which are given for the pictures in a book, not for the storyline. So we see Broken, which is a relatively new book. I Love You to the Moon and Back. Caps for Sale, which is a really old, 75th anniversary. And then First Big Book of Why. They can be nonfiction, but they must be engaging to those 2 to 6-year-olds. The next step is one that not too many people get into because it's fairly restrictive. They're 1,000 to 3,000 words, ages 4 to 7, and they're the early readers. They often have a very controlled vocabulary, maybe only 25 to 30 words in the whole book. In this one, the pictures help decode the words. So, for example, in Olive and Oscar, the favorite, well, we can tell what Olive is holding Oscar's hat. So the pictures will always help the child figure out what the words are. Many times these are written in a series. The publisher, for example, for the I Can Read books, has written just tons and tons of books at different levels, but they're all under the I Can Read, and they're all for those beginning readers. The same with Ready to Read and I Can Read It All by Myself. Then we have continuing characters. Olive and Oscar probably have a whole series. Definitely Wally Mammoth has his own series of books that are beginning readers. So they're not so much written for the story. They may be simple to the point of adults thinking they're almost silly. If they have humor in them, if they have a mystery, if they're interesting, that's a bonus with early readers. There are early readers for older children, for 8, 9, 10-year-olds who are struggling to read. Those books will have a much more sophisticated topic then. For example, it will be on race cars or forest fires. Something will be interesting, but have that limited vocabulary. Those are 2 other areas that are of interest and you might want to get into if you're writing for children. Chapter books then are about 4,000 to 10,000 words. They assume that the child is able to read on his or her own, that he no longer needs help, although many families read chapter books together as a family experience, basically ages 6 to 9. This is a much broader vocabulary. This will include some words that children won't necessarily know, but they can pick up by the context. There's maybe 4 to 6 pictures per chapter, so it's not just page after page after page of type. It may have more or less, depending. Captain Underpants has a lot of pictures per chapter because he's a very engaging character. Whereas Ramona Quimby, an older book, but an equally good one, does not have quite so many. Very often, this will be a series by character. Bink and Goalie will be a series of the adventures of these 2 best friends who will be friends forever. And we have nonfiction books here, the captivating stories for curious kids, all kinds of firsts and interesting things that they can read about. So there's sometimes a standalone title, but many times it'll be a continuing character over several different adventures in those very first chapter books. When you get into middle grade books, it's about 20,000 to 50,000 words for 8 to 12-year-olds. These books are very often in a series. You will often see 25 or 30 titles about a particular set of characters having adventures together. So there are many school and family situations for people of their age or maybe a little older. Junior high likes to read about high school students. Here we can get really some serious science fiction or fantasy or adventure. You can start using some very specific terms with older kids because they'll pick them up by the context and by what they know already. So we have 7th grade versus the galaxy. You can bet that's going to be the first of a series of 7th grade versus Finn and Ezra's bar mitzvah time loop. That's for a very specific group of people who know what a bar mitzvah is. Kate DeMello in Ferris often writes standalone books, but Ferris may be a continuing character later on. And the National Park Mystery Series, of course, will have all the adventures in the national park, maybe with the same characters, maybe with different characters, but always the same setting. So you have a lot of range of interest in middle grade, but they are for the 8 to 12-year-old range and to read on their own. When you get into young adult, We think of young adult in the library world really as 13 plus, which seems young to even use the word adult for, but they're 50,000 to 100,000 words. Sometimes there'll be a short series. You can see The Maestro's Daughter is book one of what'll probably maybe be 3 or 4 stories about the Maestro's daughter. It won't become a whole 20 or 30-page series. A lot of times they're on friendships. This is where you can develop more stories for a difficult home life, a difficult situation, friends getting into trouble and working their way out. Because these children, even at junior high, have experienced a lot of life. And they're interested in reading stories about themselves or just slightly older. Now, they're interested in different cultures. For example, Nightblood Print is an Asian story. Maestro's Daughter is obviously set in a different time frame. But here you can get real horror stories or very sophisticated science fiction with a lot of terminology. And it may include some very light romance, but that's very light romance to be in the young adult category. We're developing some other categories that move beyond that, but this is as far as the children's writing goes, would be young adult. And then when you look at Wilderness of Girls, you can tell that even though it's a very flowery place and it looks lovely, there's a bear trap in the middle. So we're going to get into some interesting complications for these girls while they're in the wilderness. That will probably be a standalone book. And then there are graphic novels, which are really for all ages. That has just blasted into the world lately, and we could use more of them because they are ones that kids will continue to read even when they get to that very difficult, I don't like reading stage anymore, that happens around maybe 5th to 8th. And if it's not corrected, not met with something they do like to read, it can continue on into life. So our little Marvel Spidey guy over here is for preschoolers. It'll just have some simple pictures, text, maybe no text. The thing about graphic novels is that even more than picture books, the drawings, the illustrations are integral to the text. The text may only be there to set the stage. The story is in the pictures, or they may be working very closely with each other. In Investigators, we have lots of puns that depend on the pictures as not as only the words. Astrid and Stella is one of those series that Astrid and Stella will have lots and lots and lots of adventures doing all kinds of things out in outer space. Percy Jackson was once a middle grade book and still is one, has been made into a movie, and now Rick Riordan has moved him in to the graphic novel world. So we can take one book and make it come out for many different people in many different types of books, and that just makes it all the more entertaining for more children, which keeps them reading, and that's a good thing. So once you've written your book, and you discover that you've written a 2,000 word picture book. Then you go up, you discover that nothing's going to sell above 500 words, and you begin to edit. One good way to edit is to go out and see what else has been written in the category and about the subject that you're writing about. That may give you some ideas as to what could be cut out, what needs to be added, what needs to be more important in your story. So there's lots of books out there. Your job ultimately is to find out how your book is different from all those other books. So to do that, get to the library where the librarian is your best friend. Read at least 30 books that are like your story. So 30 picture books, 30 middle grade books, 30 board books that have been published in the last 5 years. The books we read and the books we read to our children are no longer a good standard to go by. Now we're looking for books that have been written in the last 5 years. And have you not met your children's librarian yet, she can become, or he can become, the best guide you've got to making writing successful. After you've read your 30 books, then find some authors. Sometimes you'll find them in the books, sometimes you'll just find them online. But choose 3 of them that publish books like yours, who are writing board books or middle grade science fiction, and follow them for a while, their blog, their Facebook, for about 6 months. See what they're writing, see what they're thinking, see what they're interested to. It'll give you a peek into what your book needs to stand up. and then take a class. There are basic classes of all kinds that teach from the very beginning of the genre you're writing in, for the age range very specifically, or more general things on publishing styles and places to or to places to market your book. Children's writers are enormously sharing. We don't tend to be very competitive because, as you saw from Little Red Riding Hood, we can both write a story about Red Riding Hood. They can be completely different and they can both sell. So it's not competitive, it's very cooperative. Once you've figured out what you have and see how other people are writing the same way, you'll probably do some editing. And then it's time to get some feedback. No longer will this be a private little thing on your screen. We're going to go show it to other people. No matter how good that story sounds in your head, other people are going to have to read it. Now, remember, if you're writing a picture book, you're trying to envision an adult reading to a group of very wiggly 2 to 5-year-olds. So the first thing to find out is, does it read well aloud? So find 5 people that are not in your family, not related to you, and have them read the story out loud. Your children's librarian will be glad to do that for you. Maybe you can find a neighbor kid that will do it. Find out where the stumbling places are. Find out where the rhyme is not quite right, except in our own minds. Find 5 people to read it out loud and then edit. Many online groups, if you join one, has a manuscript exchange opportunities. SCBWI is an important group to belong to if you are writing for children at all, and they often have manuscript exchanges where you look at somebody's work and give your ideas about it, and then they in turn will look at yours. Having an online group that can just really give you honest opinions on what you've got and how saleable it is just a real blessing. Then you can also pay for a professional critique. You want a developmental editor at this stage. You want someone who will look at the whole book, who not go down to the semicolons and the transitional phrases. You want somebody who's going to look at the beginning, middle, and end to see if it starts in an engaging way, to see if it ends satisfactorily, to make sure there's no loose ends that didn't get tied up. So this is sharing your story out in the world. Then once you've gotten feedback and you've probably edited again, you want to think about the methods of publication. And here we have choices. There is traditional publishing. Many times this involves an agent who's a person who helps you actually sell your book. Some larger houses, the big 5 publishing houses, as we call them, will not take writing without an agent. They want one more gatekeeper before they look at it. But many smaller houses, you're welcome to submit without an agent into traditional publishing. But you will need a query letter. So if you imagine your query letter to tell me about your book in 1 paragraph. So you've got a book, you've written it, you've had it critiqued, you've gotten feedback. Now, tell me what's about in 1 paragraph. And then tell me why you are the person to write it. And that's all you need in a query letter. After a query letter goes out and the agent or editor comes back and asks for a full proposal, that's a more detailed project. In it, you will present not only why you wrote your book and what your book's about, but you'll also list several titles on the same subject. Think of it as having your book sitting on the library shelf next to a bunch of other books. So if you write a book on fish and you go to the library and there are 6 books on fish all lined up, what's going to make the person selecting a book pull your book off the shelf instead of one of the other ones? Is it the cover? Is it the title? Is it the way you approach the subject? So you want to look for other books on the same subject for the same age range to make sure yours is really different. Then you want the author's credentials and media present. Sometimes we call this platform, which is a very scary word, but we don't need to worry about it. It's just, why are you the right person to write this book? Do you own an aquarium? Do you sell fish? Do you like fishing? What is it that makes you able to write about fish? And then your media presence. Do you belong to SCBWI, for example? But if you're writing about fish, do also read Trout Monthly or whatever magazines people have when they care about fish. And then a very detailed marketing plan. Who is your audience? Who's going to want to read this book? Will librarians want to buy it and put it on the shelves? Will parents want to buy it and take it home for their children? Once you know all those things in a proposal and you send it to a publishing house, they offer a contract. Sometimes. Publishing houses are determined not only by the validity of your writing, but what they published last season. So if they just put out this really great fish book, they're not going to take yours no matter how good it is, because they've been competing against themselves. They're also concerned about distribution. They're concerned about shipping. They're concerned about costs and illustrations. So the fact that they sign or don't sign a contract with you can mean many, many things besides a critique of what your writing is about. But let's say you get to the publishing house and you do sign a contract and you agree to publishing dates. Here is where we lose control of the process in traditional publishing. Oftentimes we'll be asked to approve the art or the final layout, but often that doesn't happen either, because once the publishing house has bought a book, they assume the editor there knows what's best for the book. Usually today we see and authors get a chance to weigh in on things, but we don't really have any final control until it's sold. This created an interesting situation for me back a long time ago when I wrote a story that included an animal called Silky Kitty, who was a lovely Siamese cat. Somebody at the editorial office decided they didn't like Siamese. And so when I was holding the book in my hands and I turned to the chapter about Silky, she was a fat gray Persian who is now named Fluffy. That doesn't happen as much anymore, but it reminds us that with traditional publishing, we really don't have the last say on what the book is finally going to look like. There's also hybrid publishing. Hybrid is a relatively new term, and it's kind of a combination of two different things. It's got a little bit of the traditional publishing, it's got a little bit of the self-publishing in what is literally a hybrid. It will cost you money. How much depends on that particular publisher and what their rates are. You will probably be totally on your own for marking and distribution. You may end up with a garage full of books that you need to mail out if anyone buys them, or you need to carry to bookshops if they're going to sell it for you. For a hybrid publishing, you might get some editorial support, and they might help you find an illustrator, but chances are you'll pay for those in addition. What you do get is you control many aspects of publication. You decide finally what the illustrations look like and how much input you have. You decide exactly what words go on what page. They will support you in those, but because you're paying money, you get to make the final decisions. Then there's self-publishing. And a great number of people are self-publishing because the market for traditional publishing, as I said, is very long. And if somebody's published a fish book last year, the same publisher is not going to do another fish book for a long time. With self-publishing, you really don't care what else is out there. Yours is really good. It will make money, but it will cost you quite a bit. Both Amazon and Ingram have self-publishing wings. They don't give a lot of support as far as editorial goes or illustrations go, but those are the places you have the best distribution. That means that your book gets into the hands of the people who would want to buy it. Sometimes if you self-publish, it's entirely up to you then to be the distributor and the marketer. So you'll do all the marketing, all the self-promotion, all the ads everywhere, get onto blogs or get onto podcasts on your own. You'll find your own illustrator, which if it happens your cousin is a really good illustrator, you can work together and that will work fine. You'll need to hire editors along the way though. both that developmental editor to look at the big picture, and then as you get further in the process, people to look at the explicit grammar, the spelling, the sentence structure, or if you're writing for a particular group of children, to even look at the age range, the appropriateness of the idea, and the words you've chosen. However, in self-publishing, you have complete control over everything. If you self-publish with Amazon or Ingram, you can pretty much decide how fast or slow you want to put it out. So if all of a sudden somebody very famous writes a fish book, you can put the brakes on and say, wait a minute, I'm going to wait 6 months and then release my book so it isn't in the shadow of this other one. Sometimes production can slow you down depending upon where ultimately your book is going to be printed and whether it needs to be shipped overseas. But those are the three primary ways to get your book published and out into the world. So here's a few tips to give you a head start on all of this. The library is full of books. That probably sounds like it's redundant, but they're all in there and they're all free. But they're good books. There's bad books. There's old books. There's new books. Just read everything you can get your hands on in your area and also out of your area too. Take classes. Lots and lots of online classes, or go to conference. Your local community college will often have classes on beginning writing or writing for children taught by someone who's already done some writing. Often, new authors can get the advantage of scholarships to go to an online class because in our group of people, we really like to give leg ups to the new writers. There's a lot of critique groups out there. There's online, there's in person. You can find groups that write for about the same age group and genre, and that's a good idea. If you are the only person writing picture books and everyone else is writing a middle grade novel, they're going to be helpful, but not quite as savvy as they would be. The kinds of context they have will not be the same. The kind of interest is not the same. I think it's also a good idea to have a support group of other writers of the same type. People who don't critique your work, but give you support. Publicize your books as you do for them. They can give you leads on publishers if they happen to hear that someone's open, or new trends to find out what other people are writing. And then the world is full of blogs, of Substack articles. PW is Publishers Weekly. That's a very good journal to follow. They list all of the new books. SLJ is School Library Journal. That's where all the educators and many of the librarians will get their books. And of course, the monthly article that I write on Almost an Author. And there's a full backlog of those. So if what you find is not up to your liking this month, check back. There might be something you like earlier. Now, who am I that I can say all these things? I have a master's degree in library science. I spent decades in the children's room. I've done over 1,000 story times. That means my knees are stiff, but I know a lot about what keeps children happy from walking out of the room. Also, midlife, when they began ordaining women, I got a Master of Theology and a Doctorate of Ministry in Preaching. So I have my own parish. I still preach or preside every weekend. I'm fully engaged in the Christian market. So I've written 45 or more traditional published books in both the American Book Association and the Christian Book Association. That means I write both back and forth. My latest two are Just Enough Room for Christmas, which just came out last year and was in the CBA market, and very secular, How to Dress a Dinosaur, which is literally about a kid getting dressed. That's all there is to it. This is where my contact can be. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I write weekdays on Substack. I'm on Blue Sky and X and LinkedIn. I'm not wildly active on any of those in particular, except maybe Facebook and Substack. But you find your niches, you find where your people are, and then just put yourself out there. Share what you know, because that's what the other writers are doing for you. I'm going to shut this down and come back as a person again. So that's what I had to share today. I hope that was helpful. If you're not writing directly books for small children, that maybe you picked up some other things about publishing or other things that would impact what you're writing too. So if you write for all adults, I really admire you. I personally do not know how to use a semicolon.
Semicolon in fiction is a little jarring anyway. So
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Robin. That was just so well done. We really didn't have any questions in the chat. If you have a question,
Yeah.
why don't y'all just raise your hand, let us know, and we'll let Robin answer that for you. There's a lot of comments about library and loving story time and good places to interact.
Right.
Excuse me. Like Right to Ignite and a few other places were
Yes.
mentioned
Right.
about good places to be engaged if you write for children.
Yeah.
And
And if you write for Christian children, if you write in the Christian market, there are many, many places to be engaged that are very supportive. Sometimes we feel when we look at the Amazon list, like, what are we doing here? Because nothing ever makes the top 10 or the top 75. But there is a very active group of Christian children's writers out there who are happy to give support and happy to give help. Their conferences are probably some of the best ever. Christian conferences tend to be more useful, I think, than the secular, because there's so much competition. Everybody's there pushing their own book. And the Christian conferences, people are really there to help each other and to bring the best out in each other.
Which Christian conferences would you say are some of the best ones for people who are pursuing children book writing
Oh, sure.
literature?
I think Blue Ridge is good. And through Word Weavers, which is a very excellent group to join. If you're writing for Christian children at all or writing for the Christian market, Word Weavers you want to be in. It gives you an automatic critique group of people in your same genre. So every month I meet with 6 other children's Christian authors, and we share what we've got and encourage each other as well as critique our work. It's a real gift. They have a conference in Florida once a year that is well worth going to. And then there's a number of local conferences too. There's some retreats that go on. If you just type in Christian children's writing or Christian children's conferences, you'll get a full list of them.
Thank you for that. I think we could actually invite people to come back on screen now if you'd like, and just in case some
good.
questions pop up and they'd like to discuss live. We still have a little
Well,
bit of
I
time.
see some names of people out there who are very excellent children's writers and published already. So I'm not the sole writer talker in this group. Trishni, Patricia, I'm looking at you.
In good company.
So tell me what kinds of things you're working on.
Well, Rachel, I think you have one that might fit in this group. Perhaps you should chime in and share a little bit about an upcoming book of yours.
Oh,
yes.
if you would unmute, we can hear you.
Sorry, man.
Thank you.
Too much multitasking today, as usual. May I stick the link to join
Please
the
do.
journey
Yeah.
if they'd like? Okay, here we go. Okay, I hate when you paste in here because it doesn't give you paragraphs, it takes them all out. I know how to write paragraphs, guys.
Oh, I don't.
Anyway.
You wrote Tattoo on Your Heart?
Tattoo It on Your Heart is my website.
Okay.
It's spun out of a young friend of mine, a random text message between us, and he was my children's, he was a great encourager of my onset of my writing journey, and he was my children's music teacher when we were homeschooling. And so I sent him this text, and he said, I want my first tattoo to say "Come and Die," referencing a quote from Kyle Idleman's Not a Fan. And I just shot back, "Tattoo it on your heart, walk it out in your skin." And it became my website.
Very good. Very good.
But Tropical Dreams, my children's picture book, is set to release shortly. Holding my breath. We do have a release date, but they haven't posted the actual release date yet. So, though I do know what it is, and I do hope it stays. It's soon, very soon. So it's inspired by Jamaica, but not married to it entirely, if you will. And it's a rhyming children's picture book. And actually, I was going to say, the picture of it. I just put the link to the new page that they just publisher just made for the book there. Let's see. Whew. I was going to say so. It's a rhyming children's picture book. The theme is pointing to God and to creation and to the harmony and diversity in creation, and thus the harmony and diversity that we'd love to see working as it should amongst us. So, but it's barely there, as you said. The messages. There's one sentence that mentions God,
Yep.
and my characters sort of carry the message, if you will. But
Wonderful.
hop on over, if you would, to the group. We haven't started doing anything yet.
Will it be available on Amazon when it comes
Yes,
out?
it will
Okay.
be available on Amazon, in bookstores, in everywhere. It's being published through Dressed in Love Press,
Good.
which is a new. So it's Dr. Catherine Hutchinson Hayes. She's the artist.
Oh, wow. Oh,
She's
wow.
a backstory in that is that I saw her artwork about two or more years ago, and I was like, "You should be doing children's illustration." She goes, "That would be a dream." Here we are. And I wanted her to do my
Fantastic.
I wanted her to do my artwork, but
The
Congratulations.
illustrations are
Wow.
beautiful. They really are.
I cannot wait for people to see the last page.
Oh, all of them.
The
Well,
last page is
just
absolutely
a comment
astonishing.
about Amazon, that those reviews do matter. They don't have to be long, they don't have to be in depth, but when you get to 20, when you get to 50, when you get to 100, it switches how Amazon promotes your book. So one of the kindest, most wonderful things any of us can do for any of our fellow writers is to put a review on Amazon. That sounds like a paid public commercial, but really, it matters a whole bunch to the success of any one book, how many reviews they get. It doesn't take long. Just write, I really enjoyed it. Click. That's it. It doesn't need to be. Go ahead.
So something I've done for my fellow authors is because it's against Amazon rules to write a review for your personal friend, your family member, the person you work with in the cubicle next to them. That's not allowed. And so, but what I have done is I've gone to church or called friends up and go, "Hey, there's this new book by an author friend of mine, and it's something I think you'd enjoy. Would you please read it and read a review? And this is why you need to leave a review."
Right.
And so it's another way to help people get reviews. Robin, I don't know. Today I made a new list in my phone of local libraries. I've already visited a couple, and they've seen the cover and they're interested in buying it. And so I have libraries, gift shops, one school library so far. I plan to see if I can get in the schools. Yes. In New Hampshire, I have a friend who's a librarian, the school librarian at a school in New Hampshire. So that's my in that school library, and I'm hoping to get into a bunch of them. But so, I mean, any other counsel on that?
Yes. See my other video. Last year, right before Christmas, I did a whole presentation for this group on getting your books into libraries and what the restrictions are and why it is so hard to get a book that even in one line mentions God. It's hard to get it into the public schools. It's hard to get it into the public libraries. Unless it's gotten reviewed professionally, it's just hard. But it's not impossible. So stick around for the slides toward the end that tell you exactly how to do it.
Okay, so you said reviewed professionally. Can you define that, please?
Oh, sure. Librarians use several review sources. One is Publishers Weekly, one is Booklist, School Library Journal, and Kirkus. Those are the four they count on. And as a librarian, when the new books were coming out for the season, we would be given those four journals. And that was it. We went through and picked the books we wanted out of those journals. Part of that is because they were established reviewing sources. Part of that was because they worked with the distributors the library had a contract with. And what most people don't realize about the library is they'll all have massive contracts with certain distributors. And if your book does not come out with Ingram or does not come out with one of those, they will have to just jump all over all kinds of hurdles to get it. Putting an order in from the library is not an easy thing. And if you get something that's in a catalog, if you get a catalog, you might be able to order out of a special catalog. But if it's not available from the distributor, then it gets to be a real challenge to try to get that. That's just pragmatics of how the library works. It's just a big system dealing with a lot of books, and that's part of what most people stumble into. That's why I said if you're going to self-publish, go with Amazon or Ingram, who have decent distribution. If you're going with a small publisher or a hybrid publisher, find out what their distribution channels are going to be, because that'll be what makes or breaks you in that particular market. Now, that does not stop you in local bookstores. They may or may not, they don't worry about it. If you want to bring in a stack of your books and they'll sell them from the back room one at a time, some of them are happy to do that. Some of them only want to get to go through a jobber so they can get their 40% discount. So it's a complicated multi-step process, but not impossible. Sometimes sneaky.
My publisher's using Ingram, so.
Oh, good. Then you're just fine. You should be just fine. Not a problem at all. Ingram is of course, we had a gigantic catastrophe in the library world this year when Baker and Taylor shut down. I don't know if that is registered with anybody except in the library world, but Baker and Taylor was the distributor for libraries and schools. And whomp, in a course of a week, it's sold and gone and getting rid of its stock. So many books have been delayed in their release. And my book was set back, my next one was set back from 26 to 27 because we just simply can't keep up. So everything got dumped on Ingram or on one of the other ones, IPG or one of the other distributors. But it's the whole situation is just shifting around all the time. So if your book got delayed, not a surprise. Everybody else that has too.
Right.
It was way too much about jobbers, but it's helpful to know if you're in the library market.
Thank you.
I included the
for
link in the chat, Rachel, if you want to go back, and it'll be easier to click on the link than to try to look through the archives maybe. But Robin did a fantastic job. We were all just hanging on every word, just like today. And it was a great episode. So the link is there in the chat. Those of you maybe that weren't here for that, I encourage you to go back and watch that episode. Tons and tons of information. Robin is such an amazing resource and a great author. I always enjoy reading her articles for Almost an Author before I post them, and they're always great articles. And
they always have pictures of my adorable grandchildren doing something too.
So they do, and it's fun.
Look at cute babies, come on over. That's all I do. Right.
And it's fun to watch them grow over the years too.
It has been.
It has been.
They're still readers, every one of them.
Yep. Any other questions for Robin?
I'd love to hear from someone who has gone. I have not done either hybrid or self-publishing. Has anyone here had a different experience with that than maybe what I'm thinking? Anyone either hybrid or self-published and want to share that?
Looks like something we might need to look into in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be worth, I think, having a speaker who's actually done that. That would come. I think I might be able to send you a resource.
Norma. That would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Robin.
Other Christian writers.
I know the hybrid publishing, I have a few people that are in my writing group at our library, and they just have spent so much money, and really, it's not necessary to do that, I don't think, and they don't make their money back. They will go ahead and publish the book for people, but they're supposed to get a lot more support. They'll tell them they're going to do things and they don't, and things like that. So the people that I have talked to locally have not had good experiences with the hybrid.
Yeah.
So
I do have one friend who's published a great deal with hybrid and has been just delighted with it. It's gone very smoothly. That may be the particular publisher. I'm sure there's just as there are in traditional publishing, there's traditional publishers that are all over the place. So you can't ever just say, okay, well, if it's traditional, then it's okay. No, that's not okay. You still have to do your due diligence. So I think there is a place for it, and certainly it is much faster. And I put out one book every 2 or 3 years, and she's managed to put out 4 or 5 a year, and they're all quality work. So yes, I'm sure you can find disaster stories for just about any of them. And certainly the further you get into spending money, the riskier it gets. We, on the other hand, even in traditional publishing, you still expend a whole lot of time marketing and selling yourself and building your platform. So it's, except that
That's
you
the
haven't
thing, I
actually
think,
written a check
too.
to anybody. It's
Right. I think that's the thing, because you being able to market and building your platform, that is huge. And, that's something my book published a while back, 4 years, I guess, the first book. And, you're just always trying to build the platform, build your email list and all of that kind of thing. And so
if you're looking to get your backlist promoted a little bit, it's a book that's been written a little while ago. Something very nice happened during COVID. And that is many of the contests and awards that are given out have expanded their date range. So it used to be that it had to be just that 1 year. You could only put your book out just for 1 year. Now they're beginning to say maybe anything since 2022. And then there's also lifetimes or tradition awards where a book maybe back from the teens somewhere can get. If you can get another award for it, that means you can promote it again without saying, haven't you bought my book yet? So if you get a new award, it gets it back in the spotlight. You can build on that then and remind people that it's out there. So that's just a little tip on using your backlist.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And I've seen authors recently taken books that have been out for 4 or 5 years and giving it a new cover.
Yes.
And relaunching it with an updated cover, because as we know, the publishing industry is much like computers. After a couple years, some of that information is old, and you need to update what looks good to the reader now. So there's lots of different ways to go with that.
And AI, like AI or not, many people are updating their covers using an AI program because the graphics are so much easier to do. My son is a graphic artist, so I will not put a plug in for AI graphic design. You should all hire my son instead. But there
Keep
is
that in mind.
a lot. There are a lot of people who are doing that, and just a new cover makes all the difference.
Has your son done any of your books?
I'm sorry?
Has your
no.
son got to illustrate any of your books?
No, he's a professional graphic designer. He does, however, he's done my logo and a number of things. So anytime you see a bird, Robin, done in kind of brown and orange, he's designed that for me. So it's fun. But he's very busy with his own full-time work, as opposed to me, who's retired and doesn't do anything, right?
Well, thank you, Robin, so much. As always, it's a pleasure to have you here sharing your wealth of knowledge with us and experience. We appreciate it so much. And we are glad for all of you who have joined us here live today. And if you're watching the replay, thank you, and feel free to join us any Tuesday morning, 11 o'clock Eastern, and go around the country and the globe to find your time and join us every Tuesday morning here on Writers Chat. Be sure to check out our Facebook page, Writers Chat members, and join. And we look forward to seeing you next week. But before we go, Melissa, would you like to tell us what's on deck for next week?
Sure. Pardon me if I clear my throat a little. Anyway, next week we're going to have another returning guest, Ann Harris. She's going to come and talk to us again. and she's going to talk about sharing how God can call you to do something totally different than you expected with your writing. And she's going to share about that process in her own life, even when she was in the middle of another project, how he brought her into writing devotional books. And she's going to encourage you to take a step in faith, no matter which direction God leads you in your writing. So it's going to be a really good, encouraging segment next week. We really invite you to come and join us. We think you'll love it.
Yes, come see Ann Harrison.
And the text this Sunday that I'm preaching on is the calling of the disciples from the Sea of Galilee. So there you are, all wrapped up together.
There you
Respond to
go.
your
Neat.
call.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Brandy,
you so much
anything
for
else?
having me. It was lovely.
Thank you. We sure
Love
enjoyed
having you, Robin. Brandy, any closing comments for us?
You know what? How about we just close real quick in prayer?
Sounds great.
All right. Lord God, we thank you for this great time together, this so much great information. I pray that you give everybody your direction as they go forth from this, help them to take what applies to them, to be wise, to listen for your voice, and to do your will. In Jesus' name we pray and thank you. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we'll catch you next time on Writers Chat. Bye,
Alrighty.
everyone.
Bye-bye.